Dartmouth is in a leadership position today, but strategy is really about asking the question, how can we be a leader in the future? And we cannot assume leadership in the future simply because we are a leader today. If you go back 100 years, in the year 1900, if you had listed the top 100 universities in the world, it's a good exercise. You've got to go back and take a look at the top 100 universities in the world. US was not dominant. There were more than 40 universities from Germany which were in the top 100. The table has completely turned today. So leadership cannot be assumed. If you want to continue to be a leader, the question we need to ask is, how is the world of higher education likely to change? And if 20th century is an American century, I say the 21st century is a global century. And if it is going to be a global century, what are the implications of that for higher education? How do we need to reposition Dartmouth to be relevant in that century? Again, take a look at the demographic shifts. Huge mega shifts going on. The so-called second generation graduates, where people in the family have attended college for many, many generations. The second generation high school grads are dropping in this country. But the first generation high school grads, where the college attendance has not been there in the family, they are on the rise. On top of that, birth rates in the US is declining. And birth rates in countries like India, China less so, India more so, in other poor countries is increasing. The question is, what do these kids expect out of college? And are we in a position to offer it to remain a leader? Even the whole liberal education is under attack, particularly given the very high cost of higher education and the changing mix of demographics. People ask the question very different than what they were asking 25 years ago. 25 years ago, they came to a 4-year college to really learn about themselves, understand the whole breadth of opportunities. Today, given the higher cost of education, they come to college with a job in mind and say, train me for that job. They see it more as a finishing school rather than a starting school. What does this imply for Dartmouth to remain a leader? Again, think about the changing nature of competition. We are suddenly increasingly facing competition from universities abroad with fundamentally different business models. What does that imply for Dartmouth? Think about the relentless pace at which technology is reshaping higher education. How do we adapt and be a leader? Not only the very high cost of higher education, but also declining or unreliable revenue streams, whether it is endowment income, whether it is tuition, whether it is donation, all the usual suspects in revenue streams are under attack. Given these changes, I want you to think about, you're all engaged in strategic planning process for Dartmouth, I want you to think about the projects Dartmouth is executing today. And if you really want to be a leader in the future, let's think about how many of those projects that we are executing today will be in box 1, which is all about managing the present, improving the performance of all the programs that we offer today. How many of the projects that we are executing in Dartmouth today will be in box 2, which is about selectively forgetting the past? And how many of the projects we are executing today will be in box 3, which is about create the future? Manage the present, box 1, selectively abandon the past, box 2, and create the future, box 3. And what I find working with organizations, whether they be US government, whether they be a business organization like General Electric, or whether they be an academic institution like Dartmouth, what I find typically working with such organizations is organizations tend to over-focus on box 1 and think they are doing strategy. Is box 1 important? Absolutely. Is box 1 critical? Absolutely. Is box 1 strategy? No. Strategy has nothing to do with box 1. Strategy has everything to do with box 2 and box 3. And the challenge in box 3 is, how are you going to create your future in the year 2030? And if you want to create your future in 2030, then you have a job to do in box 2. Namely, you have to selectively forget. And let me clarify one thing right away. Strategy for any organization, be it a government, be it a corporation, be it an academic institution, is really about leadership in the year 2030. But strategy is not about what you do in 2030. Strategy is very much about the projects we are executing today across the 3 boxes so that we intersect with 2030. How are we allocating resources today? How is the organization's energy focused today across the 3 boxes so that we stay relevant in the next 2 decades? Another word for box 1 is competition for the present. And I say strategy has nothing to do with competing for the present. Another word for box 2, box 3 is competition for the future. And I say strategy has everything to do with competing for the future. And one thing we know as part of the strategic planning process is competition for the present is extremely important. Dartmouth College has very, very strong programs today. And we better compete to make those programs even stronger. That's very, very important. Just as important as competition for the future is. Therefore, strategy is really about how do you create your future while managing the present. How do we shape the evolution of 2030 for Dartmouth College when we are focused squarely on executing today's programs efficiently? Box 1 is all about efficiency. Box 2, box 3 is all about innovation. And this is not either or. And the reason why it is such a challenge to simultaneously operate in competition for the present and competition for the future is the thinking process and the execution methodologies you need in box 1 are very, very different than the thinking process and the execution methodologies you need in box 2, box 3. Yet in 2011, at Dartmouth, we better have projects in box 1. But in 2011, you better have projects in box 2, box 3 targeted at that future. Yet they require different capabilities, different mental models, different set of resource allocation process. This is the central challenge for us. In fact, the message I'm going to give you is a very, very simple message. Because it is a simple message does not mean it is easy to do. It is very, very hard. And the simple message is future is now. Future is not about what we do in the future. President Lincoln put it very well when he said, future always comes one day at a time. And because it always comes one day at a time, if you only focus on today, every day, one day you wake up and the year 2030 will be upon you. That's not the way to run a government. That's not the way to run a corporation. That's not the way to run Dartmouth. That's not the way to run our own personal lives. Every day, today and 2030 is reflected there. And the question is, are we allocating enough energy, enough resources to the future today? Yet there are inherent conflicts, inherent paradoxes, inherent tensions between the two. Let me just highlight what the thinking process that is needed in box 1 and how is it so different from the thinking process in box 2, box 3. Box 1 projects, competition for the present projects, is always in response to linear changes in the industry. Because the changes in the industry are linear, the organizational response would be incremental improvements in our current business model. Call it Six Sigma quality. Call it continuous process improvement. Call it operational excellence. We do this all the time at Dartmouth College. whether a course should be 18 sessions or 16 sessions, which course should come before what, should we expand the calendar by a week, how do we organize exams. These are all very important. We have to continuously improve what we do. Box 2, Box 3 projects, competition for the future projects are always in response to non-linear shifts, discontinuous shifts, step changes, fundamental changes. Because the changes in the industry are non-linear, the organizational response would be a non-linear shift in your strategy, fundamental innovation. What would be an example of a non-linear shift? If you want to take a look at the last 20 years, I would say the internet itself was a non-linear shift. Why? Because non-linear shifts will give rise to non-linear businesses. Non-linear shifts will give rise to fundamental innovation. Concepts like eBay, Amazon.com, Google would not have been possible without a non-linear shift called the internet. What might be examples of non-linear shifts for an academic institution like Dartmouth, which can fundamentally reshape our space in the next 20 years? Certainly, technologies will continue to reshape our space, just like it reshapes the space of any industry. But technology is not the only source of non-linear shifts. There could be huge customer discontinuities. Customers of the future could be fundamentally different than the customers of the present. If they are fundamentally different, their expectations about higher education would also be fundamentally different, which would also demand that we reinvent ourselves. There could be non-traditional competitors who could come into our space and force us to remake ourselves. Whenever there is a customer discontinuity, you are creating new consumption. When you are creating new consumption, we can't use the old approach, because you are trying to convert non-consumers into consumers. And when you are trying to convert non-consumers into consumers, we have to think of innovation. Part of what we really need to wrestle with is, who are the non-consumers today of higher education? And if we want to make them consumers, do we need some novel approaches? I say the starting point for Dartmouth College to engage in strategic thinking is to ask the question, what are the non-linear shifts that are going to radically shift the higher education space in the next 2 decades? And ask you the question, again, let's go back to 1990. If you're Hasbro, what are your Box 2 challenges? Box 2 is about forgetting. Box 3 is about creating. Box 3 is about learning. Box 2 is about unlearning. If you cannot unlearn, you cannot learn. If you cannot forget, you cannot learn. In fact, in my work with organizations, I found it is easier for organizations to learn, much, much more difficult for organizations to forget. Think about how many books we have written about learning organizations. We haven't written a single book about forgetting organizations. We measure companies on their learning curve. We don't measure companies on their forgetting curve. And Box 2 is about selective forgetting. That also means selective remembering. In fact, the metaphor that I like is a metaphor of chains and roots. Dartmouth College, we have some roots. If you cut the roots, the tree dies. So we better understand what the roots of Dartmouth College is. Protect it, nurture it, fertilize it, keep it forever. But Dartmouth College is also held to the past with some chains. If we can't challenge those sacred cows, if we can't break loose from those chains, it will always hold you in the past. I want to pause and reflect with you for a moment. Why is it so hard for an institution like Dartmouth to do a good job in forgetting and good job in creating while we are managing the present? And for that matter, why is it so hard for any organization to do it, particularly for an organization like Dartmouth, which is 250 years old, or going to be 250 years old in another 10 years, with tremendous amount of history, a tremendous amount of success? Why is it so hard for us to forget and learn when we are becoming efficient in what we do? And one way I can highlight this is by taking a metaphor from sports. What I have here is the gold medal winners in high jump in Olympics. Olympics, I suppose, started in 1896, so we have about 100 plus years of data here. When you plot the 100 years of data of gold medal winners in high jump in Olympics, what you immediately see is there have been 4 box 2, box 3 business model innovations in the high jump industry. And only when the business model transformed could the high jumper go to the next level of performance. In fact, the first style in high jump was scissors, and I got a picture of the scissors there. When scissors is the style in the high jump industry, if you are a high jumper, you have a job to do. What is the job? Accept the rules of scissors and become the #1 person in the scissors in the world. This is what I call box 1 challenge. Continuously improve the performance of the scissors. Is this important to do? Absolutely critical. Why? Because the scissors inside Dartmouth College today still has a lot of useful life left. Our programs have got a lot of useful life left. Therefore, we have got to put energy and resources and make our scissors perform even better. But what I'm saying is, in the next 12 months, 100% of the projects we execute at Dartmouth College cannot be to perfect the scissors. You can do that only if the world will never change. We know one thing, the world keeps changing. New customers arrive, new technologies arrive, new competitors arrive. Therefore, in the next 12 months, an organization, in addition to perfecting the scissors, we also need to have projects and experiments to innovate that scissors. In fact, in the high jump industry, when scissors was invented in 1896, as the picture shows, scissors style is a hurdling style, which is the most common way. Even you and I will do high jump even today. If someone asks you to do high jump even today, we'll probably use scissors. Think about it. Because suppose you're walking on the road, you find a little rod, what do? You kind of jump over it, just like the way a hurdler would jump. It's a hurdling motion. When scissors was invented in the high jump industry in 1896, the best high jumpers could do was 5 feet 2 inches. If scissors is still the business model in the high jump industry, high jumpers cannot achieve the performance they are achieving today. Today, as you know, high jumpers go well above 9 feet. That's not possible with scissors. Why? Because scissors is a hurdling motion. If you use a hurdling motion, the center of gravity will define how high you can lift your body. There's only so much Six Sigma you can do. If you want to beat the center of gravity, you have to change the business model. And that's what somebody did and came up with the Western drawl. I got a picture of the Western drawl there. If you don't understand that picture, what happens in the Western drawl is you run up to the pole, you kick off of your right foot, you clear the bar, but unlike scissors, you still land on your right foot. So if you're going to kick off of your right foot and still land on your right foot, that means your back is to the pole when you clear the pole. Can you visualize that? I'm certainly not planning to demonstrate that for you. Western drawl was in vogue for about 25 years until someone invented the Eastern drawl, which also came to be called the straddle. In straddle, as the picture shows, you run up to the pole, you kick off of your right foot, you clear the bar, but unlike Western drawl, you land on your left foot. So if you're going to kick off of your right foot but land on your left foot, that means your belly is to the pole when you clear the pole. That was in vogue for about 25 years until someone invented the Fosbury flop. To no one's surprise, it was invented by Dick Fosbury in the '68 Olympics in Mexico. Again, as the picture shows, what happens in the flop is you run up to the pole, then you launch yourself with 2 feet straight up in the air. Once you launch yourself like that, then you twist your body, just like the way a gymnast twists his body. In fact, the twisting motion was a box 2, box 3 breakthrough idea of Dick Fosbury, because the twisting motion allowed him to break out of the center of gravity and elevate quite a bit high. Again, as the picture shows, what happens here is you're running up to the pole, launching straight up, twisting your body. That means you are still straight up. Therefore, as the picture shows, the very first thing that crosses the bar is your head. In fact, Dick Fosbury fundamentally challenged one of the important assumptions high jumpers used to make. Historically, high jumpers assumed leg must land first. Therefore, leg must clear the bar first. That was the rules of the game in high jump industry. Whereas in the flop, actually head clears the bar first. Then it is your neck. Then it is your back. In fact, the leg clears the bar the last. You literally land on your head, so to speak. This is the central challenge for Dartmouth College. We must put resources in the next 12 months to make our scissors world class. But in the next 12 months, we better have some experiments that would also make us a leader 10 years from now, 20 years from now. So what have I said so far? This is what I'm saying. In the next 12 months, we better think about how many projects we are executing at Dartmouth College, which will be in box 1. And box 1 is nothing more than making our current programs outstanding. That's what I mean by performance gap. Whatever we are doing today, how do we do them better? How do we do them smarter? And closing performance gap is all about operational excellence, best practices, benchmarking, restructuring, Six Sigma, continuous process improvement, whatever, total quality management, whatever you want to call it. But the question really is, in addition to doing that, how many projects we have in box 2, box 3? And box 2, box 3 is all about closing opportunity gap. Another word for opportunity gap is innovation gap. And you cannot close your innovation gap by only continuously improving the performance of your scissors. You have to innovate that scissors. You have to reinvent that scissors. Perhaps this is what I'm asking you to think about. Imagine for a moment Dartmouth College in the year 2030. And every one of you honestly ask yourself the question. We know where we are in 2011. Imagine Dartmouth College in 2030 and ask yourself the following question. What is the size of opportunity gap we have to close to be a leader in 2030? What is the size of performance gap we have to close to be a leader in 2030? My point is, for most organizations, in fact for all organizations, your opportunity gap is a lot bigger than your performance gap. Then the question turns to, what are we doing in the next 12 months to address that opportunity gap? In fact, whenever I'm with CEOs, I typically ask them the question, tell me 3, I know you're doing a lot of projects in the next 12 months. Name 3 projects that you're implementing in the next 12 months which will make you a leader in 2030. If CEOs tell me we are working on total quality management, enterprise resource planning, operational excellence to be a leader in 2030, I typically tell them, welcome to 1970. There's nothing wrong with those ideas, but they're really table stakes. They're really performance management issues. In fact, another word for performance management is best practices benchmarking. Best practices benchmarking is not strategy. Think about what happens in best practices benchmarking. You kind of look around your industry. You look around players who are playing by rules similar to yours. And then you ask yourself the question, is there anyone in my industry who is playing by those rules better, smarter? Then you measure the gap between yourself and the industry leader. Then you put in place programs to close that gap. Imagine what are you going to look like at the end of that process. How can you aspire for leadership in 2030 by doing that? This is like saying, suppose you're in a locker room and you want to find out how bad your sock smells. Don't go benchmarking your socks against other people's socks in the locker room. They're all going to smell about the same. To me, strategy is about creating next practices. It's not about adopting to the best practices of industry leaders today. I just want to outline how the strategy conversation should be. Then the questions that are being asked is, what is the mechanisms we put in place to actually have this conversation? In fact, I usually don't even like the word strategic planning, because strategic planning in most organizations is a 10-inch thick document. And The 10-inch thick document is possible in box 1 because a lot is known. But a 10-inch thick document is not possible for box 2, box 3 because a lot is unknown. Therefore, the language I work with companies is strategy architecture, and strategy architecture has to be on one sheet of paper. We're not talking about a 10-inch thick paper because we cannot really, this is not about planning for the future. This is about preparing for the future. We can plan for the present, but be prepared for the future. And preparing for the future to me is really getting answers to 5 questions. The first question is nonlinear shifts. What is fundamentally changing in higher education? Incidentally, this is not a prediction exercise. We're not asking you to predict what's going to happen in the next 20 years. As we said, we can't even predict what's going to happen tomorrow. This is about imagining the future. This is about having hypotheses about the future. There is no excuse for any leader not to have hypotheses about the future. And the beauty of hypothesis is it can be wrong. Then it is a question of collecting evidence to sharpen the hypothesis, drop one hypothesis, introduce new one, etc. Where do we see as the pressure points for change in our industry? Bullet number 2 is strategic intent. This again comes back to a few questions that were asked about the very purpose of Dartmouth College. How do we know whether we have won, whether we have succeeded in 2030? That's what intent statement is all about. I'm going to say a few more words about strategic intent presently, but to me, an example of strategic intent is Tata Nano, $2,000 car. Because intent is always expressed for 2030, for the future. But even though it is expressed for the future, it should be visual. It should be something where we can agree that we can all see that future, even though you are making an expression about the future. What is the strategic intent for Dartmouth College? What is our intent for the future? Bullet number 3 is our core competencies. Dartmouth College is successful because we have a lot of capabilities. Let's have a shared point of view about what are we good at. What are we good at as an institution? Because future has to be built from the base of our current competence, for sure. And bullet number 4 to me is the most important. And bullet number 4 is about the specific projects towards which we are going to allocate resources. And the projects we are going to allocate resources is how strategy becomes a reality. And those projects has to have some bearing on the first 3 bullets. Therefore, they cannot all be in box 1. And I say the next 12-month priorities, clearly there are box 1 priorities. I would say a good 70% of the projects in the next 12 months are probably box 1 project, which is what I call horizon 1 projects. They are really to strengthen the core. How many projects you have in the next 12 months, which will be in horizon 2, which is about growing the adjacencies. What I mean by adjacency growth is you're taking your current competence and pushing it outside of your core into an adjacent space. It could be an adjacent customer space, it could be an adjacent product space, it could be an adjacent geography space. Adjacency growth is not terribly risky because you're taking your current competence, which you're good at obviously, and pushing it outside of your core into an adjacent space. You also understand your core. I say a good 20% of the projects should be in horizon 2. How many projects you have which will be in horizon 3? And horizon 3 projects are really step out. These are fundamentally new ideas. This is where perhaps the $2,000 car might reside. I say about 10% of the projects should be to experiment with something fundamentally new. And bullet number 5 is new core competencies. You cannot become a leader in 2030 by only going to the gym and doing exercises and build the muscles which will make you better at scissors. We have got to have some plan to build new capabilities. Let me just say a word about strategic intent, and then I do want to get back into some application exercise, because that will give us a chance to at least try out, at least surface many questions like the ones that you have asked. Let me first talk about what is not a strategic intent. Strategic intent is not the motherhood and apple pie kind of mission statements. In fact, once upon a time, my hobby used to be to collect the mission statements of Fortune 500 companies. And once I kind of saw a few of them, I kind of quit doing it. Because once I saw a few of them, I felt pretty comfortable. I can paraphrase a typical mission statement. A typical mission statement would go something like this. We want to offer outstanding value to our customers. We want to treat our employees with respect and dignity. And we want to provide excellent returns to stockholders, something along those lines. In fact, CEOs are so fond of that very imaginative statement. Typically, they kind of frame it and put it in the head office. Sometimes I'm kind of tempted to go in the middle of the night and kind of steal the mission statements of Fortune 500 companies and kind of mix them up and put it back. I have a feeling when employees walk through the door next day, then I'm going to say, wait a minute, that's not our statement. What happened to ours? Therein lies three differences between a mission statement and what I want to talk about as an intent statement. For something to be an intent statement, it must meet three tests. And I say the generic mission statements fail these three tests. What are the three tests? Test number one, direction. The reason the generic mission statement failed this test is if you strike out the name of one company, stick in another company's name, it's going to apply to a lot of companies. Then I say there is no point of view in that statement to galvanize the employees to create the future. When we talk about direction, what we mean is let's go north. That's direction. That's telling me I don't want to go south, I don't want to go east, I want to go north. When Tata Motors says $2,000 car, there is direction there. Incidentally, direction is about the big picture. It's not about the details of how you're going to get there. And this is the context in which some people ask, what is the goal here? And even if you have a statement of goal for Dartmouth College, does that provide direction? Or have we interpreted that enough? It's an important question we need to come to terms with. Test number two is motivation, passion. Think about it this way. If the CEO of Ford Motor Company stands up and says, our mission in life is to maximize stockholder wealth. Suppose you're an employee of Ford and you heard those words from the CEO. How much passion does it create is the question. Are you telling yourself in the morning, my God, I can't wait to jump out of bed today and go to work so that I can add to the stockholders' pockets? Even if you want stock in the company, probably that's not the reason why you wake up excited. The point here is we must create a compelling reason for each and every employee in an organization to wake up in the morning and say, you know what, I can't wait to get to work because I'm so terribly important to my organization. My competence means so much to my unit. What I'm doing there is something that I believe in. Incidentally, for Dartmouth College, it is so easy to appeal to the emotion because we are doing something noble, something which is a huge service to humanity, so easy to rally the troops, so to speak. Test number three is challenge. I say good people, certainly college professors would be good people. Good people like challenge. We don't want to keep on doing the same thing over and over again. Think about how often have we gone back from work and told your spouses, I'm really excited to tell you I did mediocre work in the office today. It doesn't juice up good people anyway. My point is this. For Dartmouth College, what is our intent? And is that intent something which has got these characteristics? It's directional because we can visualize it. It is motivational because it captures the energy of each and every one of us. And it is a challenge. Certainly, this is a challenge, as you pointed out. I don't know how many of you saw the 2008 Winter Olympics. As you can tell, I'm a big sports buff. Winter Olympics, do you know who won the gold medal for the half pipe, the snowboarding event? They call it this half pipe. The snowboarding, do you remember who won the gold medal? Shaun White. And incidentally, this is one of the highest degree of difficulty events in Winter Olympics. The half pipe is about sort of a U-shaped ice. You kind of skate on that ice, come up in the air, and in that air you do an incredible twist and still land on the ice and come back this way, this side and go. And every athlete is given 3 attempts. And Shaun White had already won the gold medal before he went for the 3rd attempt. Why? Because he was the last one to go. And every other athlete had finished their 3 attempts. Nobody had beaten the score he got on his second attempt. On the second attempt, he got a score of 46 out of 50, which is an unheard of score in halfpipe. In fact, the ultimate silver medalist got up, I believe, 39 out of 50. So even before he went for the third attempt, he already won the gold. In fact, on national TV, those of you who watched that particular event, on national TV, the coach tells Shaun White, Shaun, we got what we came here for. We came here for a goal, we got it. Don't even go for the third attempt. The reason being, it is a high degree of difficulty sport. So possibility for injury is very high. There was a lot of endorsement dollars that were riding on Shaun White's head. Don't do anything stupid. We got the goal. Let's go home. If Shaun White was a best practices benchmarker, he would have gone home. He should have gone home. Instead, he told coach, you know what, I want to go 50 out of 50. How do you redefine performance is the question. If you score 50 out of 50, you're not going to get a second gold medal. There is only one gold medal. You already got that gold medal. There is no second gold medal. The question is, when you're winning gold medal in scissors, how do we redefine performance? When NASA put a man on the moon and brought him back, how do you redefine performance is the question. And if you want to do 50 out of 50 in half pipe, you cannot do 6 sigma on the 46 jump. 6 sigma on the 46 jump will get you 46.1. It's not going to get you 50. You got to innovate. And those of you who saw the event, he did the double twist, which is sort of, people didn't even think it was possible. You kind of go up in the air. In the air, you do 2 twists and still safely land on the ice and come back on the side. I believe his ultimate score was 48 out of 50. And there are 2 ways to look at it. One way to look at it is say he failed. He went for 50 out of 50, got 48. My point is strategic intent, setting the direction is not a control tool. It's not to measure the actual with the intent and say we failed. It is about mobilizing the organization. It is about exciting the organization. It is about energizing the organization. One last point, and then we'll turn to the application exercise. My last point is this. The metaphor that I like for competition for the future is a metaphor, again, from sports, marathon race. See, in a marathon race, you don't typically take a deep breath at the start of the race and cover 26 miles in one burst. That's what you do in a 100-meter dash. In a marathon race, at the start of the race, you have your ambition fixed for mile 26. But you're not going to run this as a single race. At the start of the race, you're going to focus on the first 400 meters. Again, I want to reiterate, for Dartmouth College to be a leader in the year 2030, this is not about what you have to do in 2030. This is about what you do in the first 400 meters. What you do in the first 400 meters should be informed by what you want to become in 2030. In fact, for me, strategy is about folding the future back. Too often, organizations think of strategy as pushing the present forward. I have seen in organizations, they show me a 10-year strategic plan. What they have done is to plan for next year and then add 5% to all the numbers and pushed it out. Well, that's not strategy, that's a budgeting exercise. And we should do budgeting exercise. And at Dartmouth College, we are very good in doing budgeting exercise. But let's not kid ourselves, that's not strategy, that's budgeting. Strategy is about imagining the future. But you can't take actions in 2030. Actions can only be taken today. And the actions you take are informed by what you want to become. And therefore, it is about thinking big, starting small, scaling up fast as we test hypotheses. Because future is full of hypotheses, full of unknowns. As we test hypotheses, we refine our understanding about the future. As we conduct experiments, we become better at it. The metaphor that I'm giving is think big, start small, scale up fast, always focusing on one little thing at a time, and only when you understand better about that 400 meters do you lay out the next 400 meters, next 400 meters on way to mile 26. I'm a very big believer in 400 meters metaphor. Future is unpredictable, future is unknowable, don't take huge steps. We better try to use future as a experimentation process, fast, rapid experimentation. Every 400 meters is an opportunity for you to adjust, change course, learn from what you're doing. Every 400 meters is an opportunity for you to de-risk a big project, allocate smaller resources. Every 400 meters is an opportunity for you to set performance benchmarks, etc.